d'avoir une commission sur le racisme systémique au Québec.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Nous sommes réunis ce soir, le 29 janvier 2018, pour commémorer l'attentat qui a ciblé la grande mosquée de Québec il y a exactement un an. Nous sommes là ce soir parce que nous refusons d'oublier. Il y a un an, le 29 janvier 2017, un attentat commis à Québec a tué 6 hommes. Nous refusons d'oublier leur nom. Ils s'appellent Ibrahim Abari, Mamadou Tanoubari, Khaled Belkasmi, Abdelkrim Hassan, Azdin Soufiane, Abou Bakr Tabti.
Well, we're sad because we're remembering people that were killed, citizens like us, and we're worried, we're angry, because there's a rise of speech of hate and racism and Islamophobia. We're worried that this might be influenced by the kind of speech coming out of the President of the United States, the White House. Extreme right-wing people are feeling reinforced by this and expressing on the internet and in the street expressions of hatred and racism and Islamophobia and xenophobia.
Yeah, and what do you think about the climate in Quebec specifically that we've seen? So with the right-wing groups rising and things like this. So give me your thoughts on that.
This is another aspect of our struggle. I mean, we're against racism, we're for solidarity, and we're for justice. And if people are a victim of injustice and economic injustice, they shouldn't see the other oppressed as the enemy. The enemy is somewhere else. The enemy is great corporations, governments that do nothing, and police force that protect sometimes the extreme right groups. So that's it, solidarity, but also trying to define what is the worst enemy at this point. And one of them is the extreme right groups.
Do you have any words of support specifically for the Muslim community?
We've been to the mosques. You know, we've been in meetings of solidarity and meetings of sharing, and this has to go on. You know, to speak with our neighbors and to speak with the others and to create bridges all the time. We can't allow them to be destroyed.
There is systemic racism and there is commonplace, everyday racism too, and they feed off of each other. Muslims are blamed for whatever racism. Muslims are blamed for whatever racism they are subjected to. Paradoxically, but not unsurprisingly, because the lot of victims is to be blamed for their victimization. In Islam, the religion gets called out too. It would be unthinkable for any other religion to be subjected to such overt vilification. Yet for Muslims and Islam, this has become normative. Sorry if I'm not speaking loud enough, it's very cold.
You're good.
As a result of anti-Muslim racism, people in our communities feel great fear for themselves and their families. And this is not imagined. There is overt and covert discrimination. This is an intolerable and unacceptable situation. When children feel afraid because of their names, how they look, how they and their families dress, this is unacceptable. When women who wear hijabs are spat on, this is shocking. When in anticipation of violence, a woman stays as far from the metro rails as she can because she is afraid of being pushed onto the lines, this is intolerable. At the core is the view, conscious or unconscious, of a Muslim as outsider, as another. From that flows the view that she should diminish her Muslimness in order to fit in. We contend that this is highly problematic to think or say. To say, I am not a racist, but I do think it would be good if they did not, for example, cover their hair, pray so observantly, etc., etc. This is a slippery slope. That's the us versus them mentality. It's saying, if they were more like us, things would be okay. Racially essentializing youth angst and insecurity always as radicalization, violence against women as honor crimes, or child or youth abuse as forced marriage. When we know this isn't so, there is ample violence to the contrary, is reckless and ill-conceived. Sorry. It often misses what the actual issues may be and results in heightened othering. Majority communities are not subjected to this kind of scrutiny and policing. Outright uninvestigated assumptions are not made in their case. We see patriarchy at the core of all oppressions. We have struggled and continue to struggle to ensure that we enjoy choice without coercion in all aspects of our lives. We assert our right to live in dignity as human beings. We assert the same for all our families and communities. We will not change just to make people feel more comfortable around us. Everyone has a right to be the way they are. Governments, state agencies, the media, educators, intellectuals, and policy shapers must acknowledge the role they play in generating and sustaining anti-Muslim racism. They have a moral responsibility and ethical duty to de-escalate the racism and challenge it wherever it is. We reject tokenism and platitudes, making Muslims scapegoats and political punching bags, and using Islam as a wedge issue to score cheap political points is a dangerous game. History has shown us that sowing or ignoring hatred eventually tears an entire society apart, and those originally targeted are not the only victims.
Ma vie est devenue une longue minute de silence, solitude si immense.
Tout comme eux, je suis musulman aussi.